number of things are going on in the world, and we'll be talking about those here on the Pod TV. And one of those is taking place there in Los Angeles area. So, one dead and a suspect in custody after a gunman hijacked a city bus, according to Los Angeles police. And that is something that is going on after there was a wild chase in that area and all along those lines. So that was what took place in Los Angeles, where they had a bus hijacked and all in that kind of way. And of course, there's other things going on, including the Israel Hamas war, and now it's becoming the Israel Hamas Hezbollah war because Israel intercepted a Hezbollah ballistic missile near Tel Aviv in a first such attack. So IDF strikes 60 targets belonging to Hezbollah's intelligence directorate, and definitely Hezbollah has fired a missile at Tel Aviv in the deepest strike yet after the Israeli bombardment of Lebanon. So that's something else we're seeing in the news as well. And Biden walks off the UN stage, leaving behind purgatory, is what some folks are saying, according to the Washington Post. So Biden's final UN speech shows the most hopeful story I know, according to a gentleman by the name of Lawrence. And definitely, it looks like there are some folks that are definitely trying to figure out all of what was said and what will be the result of what was said, and whether the UN still has bite or doesn't have bite, and all in that kind of way. And Europe's deadly floods are a glimpse of a future climate. So definitely, it looks like that's something's going on. I know that Kim has joined me, and I think she spent some time in Italy. But two foreign tourists, a baby and his grandmother, are missing after floods hit central Italy. So definitely, that's something going on as Europe's intense rainfall in September twice as likely thanks to climate change. So definitely, folks are looking at climate change as well. And speaking of the UN, Zelensky is to address the UN later on today. So he's going to be appealing to the global south to help force Russia into peace. So that's something else that we're going to see as well. So definitely we're going to see whether this works or doesn't work, and all in that space. And if you need a lighter story, apparently there is a 50-pound baby penguin that is capturing the world's hearts with its hefty fluff, and that is Pesto the penguin. Apparently, Australia's nearly 50-pound baby penguin. So that's a big baby penguin, and all along those lines. And it is definitely vying to be one of the internet's favorite babies. And like I said, that's over there in Australia. Maybe Shaquille has gone to visit that particular penguin, or maybe not. But we'll find out if he pops in or doesn't. And the U.S. Navy Bighorn runs aground off of Oman as a replenishment vessel is trying to get to it, and all along those lines. So definitely looks like the U.S. Navy replenishment ship was damaged after refueling warships in the Middle East. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. And the U.S. woman meant to be the first to use suicide pod is accused company of trying to get her involved in that and everything. So several were arrested after an American woman died in the first use of a controversial suicide pod. So definitely that is something that is going on, and we'll see what people have to say about this, because I'm guessing this is like that right to die kind of conversation as well. And China test fires an ICBM for the first time in decades. So China launches an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific hours after Biden's UN address. So I guess maybe that's their way of letting the folks know what they thought of Biden's address, and all in that way. And Thailand has legalized same-sex marriages, allowing couples to wed starting in January. Thailand is legalizing same-sex marriages in the first for Southeast Asia. So definitely that's something we've seen in the United States, and now it is spreading to Thailand as well. And world leaders are voicing frustration at Israel and the U.S. as violence mounts in the Middle East. So definitely there's a lot of folks that are frustrated by all this violence and everything. And Keir Starmer is struggling to fix morale at a weird labor conference, according to the Financial Times. And definitely the British Prime Minister makes an unfortunate return of the sausage gaff during a serious speech. So definitely it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that way as well. And Iran spouts propaganda from the UN podium, calls on the Middle East to unite behind Tehran. So Iran's president challenges the West as UN meeting exposes a rift in that area as well. So definitely there's a lot going on in that way. Let me get to some U.S. stuff, including maybe some things that are happening with the election, and then I'll get to my fellow panelists and see what they've got to say about a number of these things as well. By the way, Tropical Storm Helene is close to hurricane strength, and definitely it is heading on a collision course with the Florida coast, and I think we might be getting some of that weather as well. And Marcellus Williams was executed in Missouri after 20 years on a death row, and they executed him for the 1998 killing of a woman, despite her family's calls to spare his life. So definitely there was both prosecutors and the victim's family asking that he be spared, but that was not the case there in Missouri. And definitely looks like Trump and his campaign are entering a turbulent phase in the final weeks. So definitely looks like Trump and the GOP are making a critical push to voters and all in that sense. And it's even some people like on Politico saying he should be doing better. Even some Trump allies are seeing him veer off course as well. And a dangerous chemical leak has spurred an evacuation order in an Ohio town. So Whitewater TWP chemical leak evacuation orders remain in place as crews work overnight following that chemical leak. So definitely looks like toxic leaks are happening in that place as well, and they do happen sometimes in the world. And the House is posed to pass a bill to avert a shutdown after dropping Trump voting plans. So looks like that's going on. So Congress moves swiftly to fund government and avert a shutdown. So hopefully that will be a good thing and all in those lines. And Harris and Trump are often radically different versions of manufacturing. Harris to unveil new manufacturing plans in pragmatic pitch to the business community. So she's delivered a major speech on the economy in Pittsburgh, and I think that that's going to be taking place later on today and all along those lines. And I know that Nick has talked about this before, why people build houses on the coast and everything, but it looks like a third house has collapsed in 4 days on the North Carolina coast. So there's even videos on CNN showing the homes collapsing onto the water off the coast of North Carolina. So definitely that's something that's going on. And this was actually in the Outer Banks area and all in that kind of way. And last but not least, an FTX fraudster, Caroline Ellison, has been sentenced to 2 years in prison and ordered to forfeit $11 billion. So definitely that's something going on as well. So like I said, lots going on in the world and all in that kind of way, including people still talking about Mark Robinson and all in that kind of way. But I'm going to bring in Rick Rosner and bring in one of the founders of the network, Kim Calhoun, and bring in Shaquille whenever he's ready and everything. But like I said, there's a number of things that are going on in the world. Rick's always got some things he wants to talk about. So what's on your mind today, Rick, other than the fact that y'all had a bus that got hijacked, and apparently that took place in Los Angeles?
Okay, I didn't see that. Yesterday, Shaquille brought up that, and I brought up that people that that MAGAs don't watch late night talk shows anymore because they think they're too liberal. And I watched a Kimmel monologue last night. I don't know if it was last night's or the night before, but Kimmel and Trump are feuding. Trump keeps bringing up Kimmel. And so even though MAGAs aren't watching Kimmel, Trump is, and Kimmel loves it that he gets to be in a fight with him.
Yeah, definitely gets to be in a fight with him. Hey, and maybe Kill will jump on this one as well. But it looks like I mentioned that Zelensky's going to be making his U.S. trip and speaking to the UN. And there's some reports that
he's
Trump
speaking right now
with Zelensky on the U.S. trip and everything. So definitely some people have talked about what he has said he will do if he gets elected and everything. So is this a good thing that he's not meeting with him? Is he going to be meeting with Harris? What's going on with Zelensky?
Well, there's the Logan Act that says that if you're not in office right now, you can't meet with foreign politicians. And we have a history that shows why that is a good law, though nobody ever enforces it. Nixon, when he was running for president, conspired with North Vietnam, saying don't make any progress in your peace talks with the Democrats who had the presidency at the time, and it'll be better for you when I'm president. Reagan did the same thing before he was president with Iran. So, and that's terrible, sneaky, unproductive politics.
Well, just really quickly, and I do see we got Shaquille with us as well. There is a Ohio GOP candidate, Bernie Moreno, that apparently is under fire because he made a comment about women and suburban women. To be exact, he made the comment that suburban women are single issue voters on abortion. So I guess his comment is that is the one issue that they are paying attention to, and he was saying that they probably need to pay more attention to the economics and other issues as well. So have you heard anything about this, Shaquille, and what is other people's thoughts about these comments?
It doesn't make any sense anyway. Look, I don't think it's going to swing the election, but even if it did, what do you want Kamala Harris to do? She doesn't have the power as president to change this back to what it was, right? So if you're voting for her for that reason, it doesn't make any sense. I want to address what Rick said. Look, Conan O'Brien, Jay Leno, David Letterman, they used to always bring on both sides of politics. They used to bring on Republican presidential candidates and Republican presidents. They'd make fun of them. They'd also make fun of Democrats. Now, what did we see? We saw the media actually, or the media lobbyists complain that they weren't going hard enough against Donald Trump. So they went harder against Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a Democrat. He's been a Democrat his entire life. He was loved by Democrats right up until 2015. All of a sudden, he decides to run. He ran saying the same stuff that he's been saying in all of his interviews over the last 30 or 40 years, with the same complaints about politicians, with the same complaints about them being ineffective. And he wanted to go in there, and what did he do? He actually got rid of, in the Republican side, he got rid of all of the old establishment Republicans that Democrats had previously complained about, the Bush family, etc., etc. Now, he's the bad guy, and Democrats are running to the defense of establishment Republicans. This doesn't make any sense. And as I've been saying to you recently, Rick, I do not understand how anybody who could say, I'm a liberal, could actually back the Democrats at this point. Because unless there's some kind of weird kind of American liberalism that I'm just totally oblivious to, liberalism, I thought, was we don't want big corporations to rule our lives and to get away with things, and we recognize how easily government can be corrupted. So we want to make sure that they don't take too big a role in our lives. Is a new kind of liberalism a lack of liberal? Like, to be a liberal now, does it mean, look, I'm a liberal now, and so therefore I want government to take over control of my life? Is that what liberalism means to Americans? I don't get it.
I don't feel that the liberal government or Democrat, I don't feel that they're running my, anyway, what we're talking about late night, and you go where the jokes are. And so like Biden's been Kimmel made fun of Biden last night in his speech to the UN. But there wasn't much there other than he's, that he's old and sometimes he looks confused. But with Trump does crazy crap all the time, and he's actually in a feud. A presidential candidate is feuding with a late night host. You got to go where the jokes are.
But this whole situation is the media being nasty towards Trump. Jimmy Kimmel got a lot of hate when he mucked around with Trump's hair in the lead up to 2016.
That was Fallon on the Tonight.
Fallon, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought it was Kimmel, but anyway. No. Oh yeah, you're right. It was Fallon. But there was a lot of hate that was given. Now what we've seen is the media no longer being prepared to even invite him on when he became the president, right? So in the past, what you saw in late night shows is they would actually bring on whoever the president was at the time. And, they would make fun of them to their face, and they would also give them some feedback. Yeah, okay, I said something silly there or whatever. But none of that anymore, because there was a new kind of nastiness towards anybody who's on the right. And it's not just in the United States. We're seeing it in Canada. We're seeing it in the UK. We're seeing it in Australia. And what it seeks to do, and I know I'm being very repetitive in the things that I've been saying lately, but what it actually does is it means that the Democrat side of politics, the Labor Party side, the centre-left parties, are completely oblivious to the feedback that they're actually getting from the people, and that's why you get aberrant electoral results.
Jon Stewart came back. Hold on. When Jon Stewart came back to the Daily Show after 8 years of being gone, his whole first episode was making fun of, this was back when Biden was running, was making fun of both Biden and Trump. And it bothered liberals, but Stewart was like,
and John Stewart got attacked for it by both liberals and by the right. But John Stewart is, as you well know, he doesn't like Donald Trump. He is still going to be a Democrat. Yes, he has actually made fun of them both. He did an absolutely brilliant takedown of GOP feigned patriotism, where he made fun of Senator Britt for her response to the State of the Union, and then he also started to talk about the way that the Constitution is manipulated by the GOP.
So,
no problem. That's absolutely fine. But you don't see the equivalent thing being done with to the Democrats.
Shut up, because I'm qualified to talk about this. So Jon Stewart and Kimmel bring the receipts. They are masters of the video montage, where they look at coverage, and then they use the coverage clips in a montage to make a case about something. So with Jon Stewart, and it can bug me as a liberal when he goes after liberal stuff, but he doesn't hesitate to go where the jokes are and where the hypocrisy is, and he brings receipts in the form of clips.
That's right. But Jon Stewart's made a name for himself as both sided
I have a question, and then I think it's Toby's turn, and I'm sure Sasha would like some input here. But you guys are going after Shaq. You're going after some of the late night TV hosts. But what about Megyn Kelly or Tucker Carlson, who daily and routinely put down the Republicans and put down and try to publicly humiliate anyone who sides with Harris versus Trump? And, quite honestly, I wasn't proud of ABC's debate, but them doing a fact check, I'm kind of glad they did, because it was getting disgusting to sit there and hear the exaggeration lies from a person running for president.
Exactly, which is why it's really important that they only fact check him and don't fact check Kamala, right?
Put down the late night TV hosts for taking political sides. So why not take down Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson too? Why are you always so one-sided? Because you say you're not.
Okay, well,
but everything that you talk about is one-sided. I'm going to let Toby talk now, because
you're going to ask me a question, not even let me respond. Let me give you a very quick answer, because Rick asked.
I didn't ask a question. I made a comment. Go ahead.
Just a quick thing. This idea that late night hosts aren't that are only against Republicans is a fallacy. Nikki Haley was on Saturday Night Live. Bill O'Reilly was the first guest when Jon Stewart came back. There have been, from Meghan McCain being on stuff, all the different individuals from the Republican Party have been on these different shows, on the late night shows. Even Mike Lindell is a regular on Jimmy Kimmel. The problem comes into play when we're talking about Trump, the man who who threatened SNL with a federal probe, who actually went after ABC with a lawsuit, went after all these other places with lawsuits. And you're asking why he's not on these shows? Maybe because he's very threatening to these shows. It's hard for somebody to turn around and invite the individual. This is why Facebook is so hands-off on everything right now, because Trump was the one who's already threatened Mark Zuckerberg with jail time. So stop with the fallacies of, hey, these shows are so hard on Trump. Well, Trump legitimately went after these shows with legal action if they said particular things, and won't have him on there because of these things. And also, it takes two to tango. Trump won't go on these shows. He has never gone on these after him running for president. And you're saying the fact that, with the debate, we'll go there. With the debate, they only fact check Trump. Well, Trump lied repeatedly. Harris, they did correct her on it, but just like any actual NFL,
Oh, come on, Jacoby. No, that's
and
not
notice how
right.
both
You
the
know
Republicans who've been defending
Come on,
Trump
Jacoby. Come on,
incessantly
Jacoby.
over and over, and will
Jacoby,
go
what are you
after
talking
everything.
about? This is
Dan,
ridiculous.
I am speaking.
Well,
Can
that's
you
what has
please
happened with
be
me
quiet?
yesterday when I was
Dan,
trying to
I don't
speak.
care what you have to say
Jacoby,
because you're saying something
Jacoby,
insulting to me.
Dad,
Jacoby.
We're
Dad, you got to
trying
remember
to-
there's a different set of rules.
Shaq,
You can't
can you
interrupt
please
him,
let
but
me
he can
finish
interrupt
my
us,
point?
right?
I know how
Can
that
you
works.
please let me
different
finish
rule.
my point?
You're
Both
Can you do it today?
on.
Hold
There's
on.
others
Just wait.
waiting.
We're gonna go like this until you just sit down and be
Well,
quiet.
I mean,
all right,
you
all right,
didn't
all
do
right,
this
all right.
Sit
yesterday.
like
You
this
interfered
until
with
you
me.
both be quiet. You can go on mute for just a second. Give me at least just a few more seconds to finish my point. So again, when we're trying to create this false equivalence,
You wouldn't let me
Trump
make
was
my points
Can you
yesterday.
please be quiet, Dan, so you can talk afterwards, okay?
Yeah, he keeps.
Because I know
he
you
keeps
have some
trying to mute
complaints.
me.
Dan,
You-
hold on for a second. Can you just wait?
Okay, will you let me talk
Can
next
you
time? And
just wait? I have to
Will you
finish
let-
my point on that.
Just
You're
finish
next,
the
Dan.
point.
You're next,
Dan,
Finish the point.
Dan, calm
You're
down.
next, Dan.
So again, if we're watching any
You
game
didn't
on,
mute him
any
yesterday,
sport whatsoever,
Mark.
Dan, now
I'm
you're
not
blah
muting
blah
anybody.
blah.
I hand the
Can you
time,
wait?
so don't think that I'm muting anybody.
So again, when we're watching any sport on TV, if we're a fan of that team, regardless, you could be a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, everybody's saying that the refs are against everybody else but the Kansas City Chiefs. Why? Because there have been calls going, there are more calls against the other team. Well, in all honesty, the Kansas City Chiefs aren't breaking these rules, aren't actually committing these penalties or these fouls that people are so upset about. However, yes, the refs may miss one or two, but when one team has like 10 penalties called against them and the other has 2, yeah, it seems unfair, but maybe the other team just committed more fouls and more penalties. And that's what's going on in this debate situation, is that Donald Trump lied repeatedly, lied incessantly, and yes, got pushback for those things. That happened in the first debate, but the person that people were expecting to get pushback on was Biden. Biden didn't fact check, didn't push back, but Kamala Harris did and ABC did, which CNN should have, because Trump said the same lies and repeated these same lies. So we have to stop all this false equivalency. What Rick was trying to point out is true about late night shows. They go where the comedy is. And right now, Trump is comedy gold.
Dan, your turn.
Okay,
What do you say
Let
after
me-
all that bullshit? I mean,
excuse me. Let me
Dan.
just spend a couple of minutes of your
I
time.
thought you were
What
going
I'd
to.
like to do, excuse me, I'd like to read a letter that I just read in Forbes website, and here is a full letter, and I'll let you know shortly who signed that letter. We are former national security and foreign policy officials who served in the administrations of Presidents Ronald Reagan, George Bush Jr., and or Donald Trump, or as Republican member of Congress. We have served in the White House, the Departments of Defense, Treasury, State, Justice, Homeland Security, Commerce, and other agencies, and in Congress. We believe that the President of the United States must be a principled, serious, and steady leader who can advance and defend America's security and values, strengthen our alliances, and protect our democracy. We expect to disagree with Kamala Harris on many domestic and foreign policy issues, but we believe that she possesses the essential qualities to serve as president, and Donald Trump does not. We therefore support her election to be president. We firmly oppose the election of Donald Trump. As president, he promoted daily chaos in government, praised our enemies, undermined our allies, politicized the military, and disparaged our veterans, prioritizing his personal interest above American interest, and betrayed our values, democracy, and this country's founding documents. In our view, by inciting the violent attack on the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and defending those who committed it, he has violated his oath of office and brought danger to our country. As former Vice President Pence has said, anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be President of the United States. It goes on and on. I'll just tell you the people, at least some of the people, because there are well over 700 signatures. But just first what comes to mind, I think it's in alphabetical order. Admiral Steve Abbott, former Deputy Homeland Security Advisor, George W. Bush administration. Kenneth Edelman, former Director, Arms Control and Disarmament Agency, Reagan administration. Dr. Carol Edelman, former Assistant Administrator, United States Agency for International Development, Reagan administration. Major General John Barry, USAF, retired, former military assistant to the Secretary of Defense. Richard Barth, former Assistant Secretary, Department of Homeland Security, George W. Bush administration. Christopher Barton, former Director, National Security Council staff. John Bellinger, former legal advisor, National Security Council, George W. Bush administration. I can go on and on and on. There are 700 signatures. What do you think? And all of them are well-known Republicans. Why would you disagree with them?
Well, you shouldn't, but in what the
Where are the Republican friends? Where are they disappeared while I read this letter, or what's happened? Where are they? Oh, have you heard my letter that I just read from Forbes?
Yeah, we've been here. We've been here. I didn't disappear. Take that up with the producers of the show, Sasha.
Have you
I don't run
heard?
away.
Okay, excuse me. Have you heard letter from Forbes?
Yeah, I've heard your letter. I've heard your letter, but it's more of the same. But yeah, of course, there's going to be people there that disagree with Trump. That's exactly what Trump. The sorts of people that Trump was going after. But I suppose you think that we're all supposed to sit there and go, okay, well, because these people are saying that, just like the 50 intelligence agents that said that Hunter Biden's laptop, had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation. But you know what? I'm just going to repeat what I've said before, because I've heard this long-winded ramble from Jacoby, and everyone, and I've heard what Kimberly says. My answer to you, Kimberly, is because this was the point that Rick brought up on the previous show. He said MAGA people aren't watching and Republicans aren't watching late night TV. Now, if you don't like my answer as to why they're not watching it because they think it's unfair, what exactly is your reasoning for why they're not watching it? Because so far, for now 4 or 5 years that we've been on the air, the only thing that you guys can come up with is that everybody who votes for Republicans and everybody who votes for Donald Trump are racist and sexist and homophobic and transphobic, and they hate immigrants, and they're just terrible people. And because you do that, because you guys take this morally superior position, you are not listening to what people are telling you. When Jacoby sits there and comes up with an excuse for everything, he knows, and everybody on this panel knows, that ABC did not do a single live fact check during that debate. Don't gaslight us all and tell us that they did. We know that they didn't. Now, while I'm on that topic, what we have seen is media be so brutal towards Donald Trump ever since he started running, and more so after he became the president, that it has turned away a lot of people from him that otherwise I think would vote for him. Okay? And what you are doing is you are destabilizing your country, and it's destabilizing the West. Because while we sit here and get so divided, national security issues are at play. We have aging military equipment all over the Western world. We don't have in Australia, for example, we don't have the oil resources that we're supposed to have. We're supposed to have 90 days worth. We've got as little as 3 days worth. The US has allowed its military equipment to become old. And meanwhile, everyone wants to sit around and argue about what a woman is. It's absolutely ridiculous. But the main point that I will say to you, Republicans and conservative parties in the Western world dropped the ball. For decades, they dropped the ball when it came to funding social services like healthcare, funding social services to make sure that people who are reliant on social security payments and pension payments receive enough money to be able to survive. Their reaction has always been, to hell with it, just make them work harder. That has always been their reaction. More recently now, they are taking the side that actually we do need to look after these people, and we're running out of resources to do so because of the mass amount of migration that's come into the countries. So you've now got Republicans fighting for the things that Democrats used to stand for, while Democrats turned their backs on them. And then Democrats and Labor parties around the world say the same thing. They say, well, it's just misinformation. You know what we should do? Anything but listen to the people. What we should do is we should create laws that censor the expressions of speech, that censor memes, that do all that sort of stuff. And every time it's brought up, there is excuse after excuse after excuse, but no acknowledgement. So if you guys want to sit here and say that you have no idea, you don't have a single clue as to why so many people are voting against your party, and you want to know who's responsible for it, it's not the crazy people that you think are on the other side. If you want to know who's responsible for it, go look in the mirror. And Dan's up next, Mark. Dan's up next.
Shaquille, hold on a second.
Dan's up next. So when he was on here last time, Jacoby interrupted him repeatedly to the point that Dan couldn't finish what he wanted to say. But when Jacoby gets interrupted, oh no, it can't happen. We all get muted and put backstage.
No, well, like I said, I didn't put anybody backstage. That's on other people and everything. If they wanted to say what they did, that's on them and everything.
That was Kimberly that did that.
Thank you.
Because she likes to censor free speech.
I've been muted.
I didn't put anybody backstage. I muted people so somebody could finish what they're saying because it was every
because it's really important that Jacoby gets to finish what he's saying uninterrupted. But when he interrupts me and when he interrupts Dan to the point that Dan can't finish what he's saying, it's not important for Dan to finish. Because that's fair.
Let's stop whining and complaining and
No, I'm not whining. I just want the audience to know. I just want the audience to know what happens here.
Muted.
Hold on a second,
This
'cause I had a
program
question.
has become a political diatribe for the left. I
It
do not
always turns out-
understand why you don't like to have even and fair discussion about issues that relate to this country's future and the importance of our republic. You don't.
Well, I think that each side
You're
is given a
hostile.
fair chance to speak. I think each side is being given a fair chance to
But
speak.
I haven't.
Kim, hold on. Kim, hold on a second.
It's
And
Mark's
then,
turn
hold on
to
a second.
talk. So let's
Hold on a second.
let Mark
Hold on a
talk, and I
Yeah,
think
because I was
Steve
actually going
is
to bring up
here.
a point that Shaquille brought up, and Dan, you probably have some
Good
thoughts
morning,
on this as
Steve.
well. Because yesterday we talked about the foreign policy and the jobs going off to other countries and everything. Apparently, yesterday in Savannah, Trump shared his ideas for a manufacturing renaissance, his words, not mine, that he said would bring billions of jobs back to the U.S. from overseas. And he said, with the vision I'm outlining today, not only will we stop our businesses from leaving for foreign lands, but under our leadership, we're going to take other countries' jobs. Did you ever hear that expression before? Have you ever heard that we're going to take other countries' jobs? It's never been stated before. We're going to take their factories, and we had it really rocking 4 years ago. We're going to bring thousands and thousands of businesses and trillions of dollars in wealth back to the good USA. And then he called for lowering the corporate tax rate from 21% to 15%. And then he also pushed for those tariffs and everything. So I just wondered, is this an effective idea, Shaquille, to try to go in this corporate war with the other governments? I don't know the answer to this.
Dan has been waiting to speak, and I think that he should have the opportunity to do so. And then because Steve is here, who is often limited on time, we should go to Steve before I answer any other questions. Dan, I'll yield my time to you.
Okay, so the point I was trying to make the other day that I was rudely interrupted on was this. What Trump wants to do, get Chatovi's picture off there. I'm talking right now. Would you get my picture on? Okay, so what I was trying to say the other day is Trump is all about stimulating the economy and increasing production and increasing the pie, creating a bigger pie. It's like Dave Walker said, the only way we're going to be able to get out of this mess is produce ourselves out of this mess. Because what he's advocating is a budget based on gross national product. And trickle-down economics, whatever you want to call it, the point is, the fact is, if production is increased, more people are employed, we have better jobs, we have higher pay, and we are more effective overall. One of the other problems that we're facing, and I know Kimberly's going to disagree with that, we're going to have an issue. David Cahill, a real expert, we're going to have, we have higher gas prices, which is affecting the cost of transportation and goods and delivery of goods and services. that was a major factor of increasing prices and inflation. It was a dumb idea for the Biden administration to cut oil production in the first couple of years. Yes, they're back, but they're back only because they got their tongue stepped on because they were so stupid in canceling the oil production. We've got to produce oil and energy while we're looking at alternative solutions that are effective, right? So that's the point. Increasing deregulation, increasing efficiency in business, and all the things that are important to do to make this economy more robust and effective and get the damn federal government out of the way. Border security is increasingly important because it's costing us billions and billions of dollars to take care of these illegal immigrants that shouldn't be here at all. Now, what we should do is look at the folks that are actually being productive in the United States, are going to provide a future that will be productive for the United States and not be a drain on our economy and suck out our money on our Social Security and other federal funds. It's just ridiculous for us to put a gun to our heads and create bigger problems for housing and other things. It's not fair to allow millions and millions and millions of illegal immigrants across the border, creating problems for citizens of the United States who are paying the bills. Americans are paying the cost for these deliberate, disruptive policies that are intended to do only one thing, and that is to disrupt future elections and create an imbalance in the U.S. and create more liberal political policies and elect people who are actually more left of what we have already. It's gotten to the point that it's dangerous. Now, Trump, I agree, is not the poster boy for virtue and all those other things, but he's not advocating the same policies that Biden-Harris has advocated, creating the problems that we're seeing. So, and then with respect to the wars, let's look at it. Trump is getting us out of all of our conflicts around the world. What happened with Biden? Well, not only did he buff up Afghanistan, he screwed us up into Ukraine, and he's messed us up with Israel, and we're in an increasingly more dangerous situation in the world as a result of his policies and his weakness. Harris is not going to be any stronger than Biden because she has no background in international relations. She's a joke. She had the lowest rating as a vice president in the history of the United States. Why? Because nobody took her seriously. Even her staff didn't like her because she was so vicious. And so, my gosh, what are we doing? Putting a lipstick on a pig and expecting to sell that to the American people. And then we're all jumping on the back and being divisive about how we're dealing with everything. It is ridiculous that we have to fight about this. When before, I think we were both sides, absent Tovey, were pretty level-headed about discussing these things. It's gotten out of control, and everyone is at blame for this, including me. But the point is that we can't have. Jack is right. We need to be able to have an honest discussion about what the issues really are. What are the things that are most dangerous to democracy in the United States, and who's responsible? Because right now, we're not having that discussion. It isn't the Democrats or the Republicans are the biggest danger to democracy in the United States. It's the people who are controlling them, the big corporate interests, the others, international organizations, the bribery, the corruption in our government has created these problems and incentivized the kinds of things that we're seeing, this bad behavior. As David Walker said, most Americans agree on what should be done. It's not going to happen because our political leaders don't have the will to look after the interests of Americans ahead of their own selfish, money-grabbing, power-grabbing issues. And that is a true statement.
Okay, I think we're going to Steve next. Steve, I'm glad you're here and everything. So any thoughts you got? You are a political candidate and a political
Yeah,
person?
and like I said, after the elections, I'll be coming back on a more full-time basis, but I have a number of media requests around North Carolina, and I'm also traveling for Governor Stein for our next governor. So I've been quite busy as one of his advisors. But what I would like to say, first of all, is I do think it's important to have a respectful conversation, and I want to thank Dan Worthington for bringing up these good points. I want to rebut in a professional manner, just kind of giving another perspective. First of all, I want to remind everybody that former President Trump did come in, I think, with a good mandate, making America great, wanting to create jobs again in manufacturing. I think he was successful on that. And I do think President Biden was also successful in continuing that. If you notice, Biden actually continued many of the tariff programs that Trump put in place, although protectionism does have its costs. I think sometimes bringing back jobs and paying high salaries and benefits and tariffs could actually be adding to higher prices. I know we're seeing that in construction and logistics in North Carolina. So I think both presidents can be credited for this, but I think both presidents could perhaps be blamed for continuing these trade wars. Donald Trump was joined the list of presidents that wasn't reelected to a second term. And I know there's a debate on whether that was legitimate or not, but he joined President Carter, Gerald Ford, George H.W. Bush to not be reelected president of the United States. And I think there was a reason for that, his handling of the pandemic. It's up in the air whether the economy was better. But, I think that's just one point to note. And just 2 points of rebuttal. First of all, in terms of immigration, I agree with Dan Worthington. I do believe that we have an immigration problem in this country. People are coming in illegally, and I think there needs to be laws put in place or addressing the root causes of migration, which is that countries are leaving. Many from Venezuela are leaving because of a dictator that's brutally torturing, murdering, raping residents, citizens, putting them in prison if they speak against the government. And so they're fleeing here on the notion of asylum, but asylum is really grounded in limited cases, and we don't have the number of resources to do that. So we need comprehensive immigration reform. Vice President Harris has said that she would support that. And, I know that she was the vice president. I do agree that maybe she didn't handle the situation the best, but former President Trump was actually asking Republicans to not support the comprehensive immigration reform bill because it would be bad for him politically. Now, to me, I think that this should not be a political football. We need to accelerate the path for legal citizens. Those many from India that are here 10 to 12 years, they're leaving and going to Canada because they can't work. But at the same time, we have to address with technology, border controls, and all those kind of things. The second point I'll make in terms of the economy, and I'm going to hand it back to the floor, is that I see it very differently. I think if you look at North Carolina, I'm meeting Governor Cooper on Friday at a major economic announcement. There's an energy company located in Morrisville, a battery manufacturer, that's receiving a $100 million grant from the Department of Energy. They're going to create thousands of jobs. We've had about $41 billion of investment coming into North Carolina just from the Infrastructure Act, sustainable green companies, electronic manufacturing companies. After Roy Cooper leaves the governorship, unemployment is now in North Carolina at 3.5%. When Trump was president, unemployment in North Carolina was about 5.5% to 6%. So I think there's an argument to be made that 15 million new jobs under Biden, unemployment lower than it's ever been, inflation has come down, and so the economy actually, Dan, is doing much better than Donald Trump was in the White House. So now the deal is this. I don't think Vice President Harris is taking that message out to the American people. And I think if she doesn't do it effectively with those undecided voters, she won't win. That's the bottom line. But I think we're going to talk facts. Let's talk facts. Okay. And and everything I'm saying is data driven. You can look at it on Reuters, on legitimate sources. You all know I'm a respected leader in North Carolina, but also a media guy. I'm also a professional. I'm not pulling from the hip here. I'm not a shoot from the hip kind of guy. And so that's just the bottom line. And so I think that we need, but I'm going to go back to the basics as I close out. I think Dan Worthington is correct. We need to have a respectful debate on the issues and then leave it to the American people to decide. And we'll know on November 5th who the 47th president of the United States will be. We'll know who the next governor of North Carolina will be, which is most likely going to be Josh Stein, and probably the largest landslide in North Carolina history. we're looking at maybe a 15 to 20% win. For a guy that Trump endorsed, said he was a great guy, called him MLK, and he got found on porn sites and refusing to apologize to the people of North Carolina for this.
Well,
an absolute embarrassment to the Republican Party, and might cost Trump the presidency. To be very frank, because we're going to win North Carolina, and we're going to win Pennsylvania, and then it's over. So you guys better get ready, because you put
just a couple of things. Just a couple of things on this. So the media's gone after Mark Robinson pretty heavily.
But he deserves it. You don't go on porn sites.
Let me finish. Please let me finish. They've gone after him pretty heavily. He's been the lieutenant governor for what, 3 or 4 years. So why have they all of a sudden gone after him now? And he denies the allegations. Now, you're right. Josh Stein is currently, 11 points ahead of him or whatever. So it's very likely, I would say, very, very likely that Josh Stein's going to become the governor. But that's not actually showing up in the poll numbers for North Carolina at the presidential level. So I think that you're perhaps being overly jubilant that's going to swing the entire presidency to Kamala Harris's favor. And it's also worth noting that the polling is showing that Kamala Harris's numbers are decreasing, and there's increasing support for Donald Trump. As for the other things that you've mentioned, let's just go back and you remember the day it happened when we were talking, and I said to you, it'll be very difficult for me to ever look past what happened in Afghanistan, and then in the coming months, Joe Biden just said, I've turned the page. When families were saying, hey, our family's members are still over there. And some of the people that he turned his back on were NGO workers. These are people who work for charities from all over the world, from my countries as well. And he just went, yeah, well, I've turned the page, and no further statements were given. I think that, again, Democrats are going to have to understand that people remember these sorts of things. They remember that the economy was doing pretty well under Donald Trump prior to COVID. They remember that a lot of the things that we complained about, like the Governor Cuomo in New York, Trump responded and gave him a chip with all the ventilators on it. He never ended up needing it. He never ended up using it. So a lot of the other issues that you're talking about are state issues when it comes to the handling of the pandemic. Now, Donald Trump perhaps could have done a better job, but compare the job that he did to the job that everybody else's leaders did at the same time. Do you really think that Biden would have reacted better? I mean, he listened to the same advice from the same person, Dr. Fauci. So, I think that, again, as I keep saying, people in America are saying very clearly what they have an issue with. And you can sit there and use numbers all you like and say the economy's doing really well and we've added 15 million jobs and the stock market's at record highs. But if the everyday person is telling the pollsters and is telling media and is telling their elected leaders, I can't afford to go to the grocery shops, I'm struggling to survive, and you ignore them and say, no, ignore all that, the economy's doing really well, you're going to end up with a shock when they don't vote for the Democrats. And last thing I'll just say, this whole unburdened thing, I imagine what can be unburdened by what has been. It's come out in the last couple of days that that's a paraphrased statement from something that Karl Marx wrote about in the Communist Manifesto, where he was talking about rewriting history without the burdens of the bad things that happened in history, so that you could go on to a new slate. And I think that's pretty interesting when Kamala Harris and Democrats are trying to suggest that the cost of living is not as high as what it was, and it was worse under Donald Trump. That wasn't what people in America felt at that time. And if COVID had never happened, there's no question in my mind, this is not something that anybody can prove, but there's no question in my mind that he would have won the election in 2020.
Hey guys, thank you so much. I've got to run, but I respect, I appreciate those opinions. And I think moving forward, this is the kind of debate that we need to have. And hopefully the standard could be that we bring the debate like this, because I think it has to be about the issues. It's getting too personal. There's no reason. I'll end with the famous quote from one of my favorite movies, Star Wars. There was a scene where the lady said, she goes, this isn't about fighting who we hate. It's about saving what we love. And I think we all have things about our country that we love. And so we need to work together out of respect with each other, identify the problems that we have together, and work as Americans to get it done. We're better than what we're getting right now. So I would just say, forget the hate and let's try to do what we can to respect each other. That's what makes good policy. And rather than just putting one side against the other, and it's like a gladiator fight and nobody wins in that battle. So I would just request people listening to tone down your social media rhetoric and let's have honest debates with your neighbors, even if you're a Republican. I actually come from a Republican family. My father is a conservative Republican. My younger brother works on Trump's campaign. He's a big supporter of J.D. Vance. He and I don't agree, but you know, we still are family, and we still had to debate these things at the dinner table. And you know,
There's
so anyway,
still time for you to recover and switch sides to the Republican, Steve.
Yeah,
well, my dad's a patient man.
You know me, I love it.
Yeah, I gotta run. I gotta be. Kimberly, thank you so much.
Hey,
I'm running
thank
late.
you so much for your update on what's going on and keeping us posted politically, because I know you're in the middle of all of it, and it's great to
Yeah,
see you.
And I'll be
again.
following up with you on your last text. Thank you so
Right,
much.
I miss our conversations, and I'm
Yeah,
glad
I'll-
I'm back now. But let's
I'll be back.
talk, you know, about
I'll
a few things, you know, that many people in our country are in tremendous debt, and this didn't happen overnight. I believe a lot of it happened, during COVID, and it just continued to trickle down or river down. But I believe that, you know what, many of them are going to debt relief programs, and maybe our government needs to hire a debt relief program to come in and help them see where the problem is, as opposed to sitting there and arguing about it. Because in most homes, if you sit there and argue about it, you're going to end up divided and in divorce or whatever. Here in the country, probably civil war, but I think that maybe hire a debt relief program group to come in and take a look at the books, because they apparently don't know how to do it themselves. But I'm just throwing darts at a board for a problem that we've had for many years, and it continues to get worse instead of better. And quite frankly, I agree with a lot of people that handing out the PPP loans and trillions with no accountability at all and not making them pay any back put us in further debt. So I think that what we need to do now is get a group of people in to do what millions of Americans are doing today, and that's having someone evaluate their debt problems. Because apparently our government can't do it. But, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Rick was next and everything.
All right, so I agree with Shaq that if it weren't for COVID, Trump would likely have gotten reelected. But he had the bad luck to get hit with COVID, and it wasn't just bad luck. He disbanded America's pandemic response team in 2018, 2 years before COVID. He did one good thing about COVID, which was the Warp Speed Vax program. He did a lot of bad things about COVID. And when it comes to presidents, you kind of have to own your luck. Clinton was fantastically lucky as president. His successor, Bush, was unlucky that he got hit with 9/11. So luck is part of a presidency.
No
Well,
doubt.
if anything, George W. Bush was lucky that 9/11 happened, because it really meant that his popularity rose, and there was so much support for him, and he got a second term. I do want to just say though that, so prior to the 2020 and everything that happened, it was a tough year, for everybody around the world, and people died, people were stressed out, it was horrible. But prior to that, I've mentioned this to politicians all over the Western world. There is, just to use one example, penicillin. There is four major penicillin, there's four penicillin companies basically in the world. There's a very, very small one in Austria that doesn't even supply enough for Austria. The other three are in China. Now, I don't have a problem with them because they're in China. I don't care where they are. They could be in Singapore. It is an issue because whenever something happens, generally not politically, it's often sometimes there's been an outbreak in China, or there's been some kind of weather event or anything like that, the world supply of penicillin dries up very quickly. Why would we allow that to happen? All of the, I won't say all, but a lot of the off-label pharmaceuticals are being manufactured overseas. That, at very least, should be a national security issue, especially for the Five Eyes countries. We are seeing that kind of thing happen with our energy supply. Even if the United States increases the amount that it's pulling out of the ground as far as oil and natural gas, you don't have the refining capacity and you're getting it done elsewhere. Not only is that more expensive as far as environmental cost, it's a national security issue. I was horrified to find out how little we have in reserve here in Australia, and we don't have any refining capacity either. It is an issue. All of those are significant issues, and the major one is that in the Western world, because of other advancements in technology and etc., we have lost the manufacturing sector. What that means is that if there is an increase in violence around the world, if we were to ever actually experience a new world war, how would we possibly be able to produce the sort of things that we would need to keep us safe and actually enable us to win the war? In World War II, America was a bit late to the party, so it was okay. Before they came in, they had the resources to come in and overpower the bad stuff that was happening in Europe. Does America have that position right now? I don't think that they do. I mean, you've got a fleet at the moment. Your naval fleet, for example, the average age of your naval fleet is 20 years old. Our adversaries have brand new equipment. The oldest current naval vessel that you have is 54 years old. Okay? These are really serious issues. And as I said before, people are talking about different things that are affecting them in their lives, and nobody's listening to them. And people have talked about before, you need to bring jobs back, you need to increase manufacturing, you need to do something about pharmaceuticals, you need to do something about how oil is being refined. And it's just become so politicized, nothing gets done. And we have, across the Western world, weakened ourselves to a point which is horrifying, in my opinion.
With regard to the oil companies, they own the politicians because they're rich and they have, what do you call it, legislative control. They've bought the politicians. Oil companies get away with murder, with refining, with a bunch of stuff, but they can't be held to account because of what I just said.
Yeah.
But Rick, that's my point again, Ted. I'm not trying to pick on you. It's just that you're the most politically like me, I think, right? In our value system, at least. I don't understand why you would be even enthralled at all about Democrats. It's not just about this presidential election, about Democrats in general, because they are the group that more than anybody is getting so much support from big corporations. They're protecting the banks, they're protecting the oil companies. The banks aren't as well protected by the Republicans as they are by the Democrats.
Well, let's talk about Biden. Biden was Delaware's senator for 36 years. Delaware is where banks go and other corporations go to avoid governance. So yeah, but I mean, Biden would be in the pocket of big banks.
But there was some Republicans in those pockets too. I can't let you get away with that, Shaquille, and everything, because there are definitely some Republicans that have been.
But the reason I like the Democrats over the Republicans currently is because the Democrats, you may not agree with their policies, but they are less crazy and less incompetent than Trump. And Trump.
Okay, but that's something. Okay, so that's something that's subject to opinion. But when it comes to the core matter, who is it that currently is talking about increasing the size of the government, and who's talking about decreasing it?
Well, both
a lot of the issues that we are talking about is a complaint about the size of government and the corporations being able to manipulate government. That's what the complaint is. If the Democrats are talking about increasing the size of the government, then the Democrats are more the cause of the problem than the Republicans are.
But Jacoby, and we got to wrap up.
Jump in. Both are. Rick is right. Both are actually talking about increasing the size of government. Trump is talking about throwing in this other entity, which we already have an entity in there to do exactly what we're already doing. Trump was also the one that created a space force, which we already had NASA and all the other places that were around that arena in the first place. So both are actually talking about it, but they're talking about it in different ways, and both make it palatable for the people that they are talking to. One thing that I think you spoke about, Shaq, which I completely agree with, we forget about penicillin, but I think the problem with penicillin that we forget about also is the overuse of penicillin, making bacteria, able to evolve itself.
That's a separate point to the point that I'm making about the manufacturing of pharmaceuticals.
Can I even finish, Shaq?
Yeah, you're over
Thank
time.
you.
Go for
So
it.
please let me finish because I was actually talking about the same point that you were talking about, but just because I said something different that you didn't even understand, you're thinking, "Oh, I'm going off on this
All right,
tangent."
all right, all
Oh,
right.
yeah, I don't understand
Let
about
me finish.
penicillin-resistant
Let me
bacteria.
finish. You only
Please,
have a few
please
minutes.
educate the
Jack,
dumb
stop.
Just finish, Toby. Just
Thank
finish.
you. So in
Tie it
terms of
up.
penicillin, yes, people talk about it in different ways, about manufacturing. That's one thing that people talk about in terms of bringing it back and so on and so forth. And that could be a problem. So people have an issue with that, which is true. People also have an issue with the overuse of penicillin, which creates an evolution in bacteria, which makes that bacteria immune to the actual penicillins, which creates a problem in the human body and a whole bunch of other things medically. So people don't want to hear what they don't want to hear, just like you didn't want to hear. I'm agreeing with you in terms of everybody talking about things and people not listening. So these arguments we come across, they become personal to ourselves. And yes, I completely agree. We should have a honest debate about different things. The pull out of Afghanistan, horrible. It was very horrible, and the way that it was done it was chaotic. So many problems, so many things that we could have done better. Even leading up to it, and this is where we get into the ignoring the facts and ignoring the things because we want to just pigeonhole it to one person. If we talk about these things, Afghanistan could have been done a lot better had more soldiers been left in there. But more soldiers were required to leave because the prior administration had pulled out 2,500 soldiers or pulled out a ton of soldiers and only left 2,500 there. And then they also negotiated.
Is that what you're going to get at?
It's time to wrap up. I want to thank everyone for watching us. Thank you for your inputs. We're having heated discussions about everything that everyone else is having a heated discussion about. But everyone, go get your facts. Go read them. They actually exist. Don't listen to the media. Go get your real facts and learn the truth because it's there. It's all there. Timelines, data, money, spreadsheets. It's there. Just go read it for yourself. Thank you for watching. We will see you tomorrow on World Edition. And have a great day.